My name is Joana Fidalgo and I'm an engineer. I've always worked for OEMs and now I work with General Motors. I do a bit of writing as well. I write monthly contribution for the intercooler, do some pieces freelance, but mostly the 9 to 5. My family's not really into cars, but I just really like the way that cars looked. I've always had some attraction to cars, I don't know why. As a very shy kid, I didn't know that many people that share the same passion as me. But getting my first motorbike and then my first car, it was really a way of meeting people, and cars just became that passion, that vessel to live the adventures, to meet people, to do so much else. I got a bike before I got a car. I was 16. I think my parents got a bit tired of driving me everywhere. So they said, okay, right, it's time, you're gonna get a bike. I got a Honda Sera 125. And it was fascinating. It was the first time I was in charge of something. I was in charge of the machine. I just fell in love with it. My first love was cars, but then the first thing I ever got to drive or ride was a motorbike. So that always stayed there a little bit. Car scene in Portugal, I'm gonna say not non-existent. It was a little bit like the Max Power era in the UK. We had maxi tuning. It was very much based on modifying cars and going a bit crazy, and so a bit different from the things I'm into now. But it was. I think we're for the same journey as here in the UK. My mum had a Polo GTI. Now in Portugal, the Polo GTI was a 1.4. This too was very exciting. So that was the first car I driven. My very first car was an R56 Mini Coupe D with a huge Cookie Monster vinyl on the rooftop. So I studied automotive engineering in Portugal, and then after that my parents always wanted me to go somewhere and get some international experience. So I said, okay, I'll do a master's abroad. And I decided to come to the UK to study motorsport engineering at Oxford Brookes. And the idea was always, I'll come in, stay for a year and go back. Still here, never went back. I've always worked for OEMs, PSA, Peugeot, Citroën in Portugal, did an internship with them, BMW Mini in Germany and in the UK. I work with Jaguar Land Rover and now I work with General Motors. I was a huge Mini fan. I still love Mini. So as my first car was the R56 Coupe D, when I came to the UK, I could finally afford a Cooper S because it was so much cheaper in the UK. That's what I had to get. There was no other choice. And I was working Mini as well at the time. It was the perfect job, perfect car, perfect life. When I changed jobs to go from Mini to start working at JLR, I thought it was time to be a bit of an adult. And because I had a bit of a commute, I sold the Cooper S and they replaced it with an Audi A3 diesel. Bad move. That was the car I hated the most. After the Audi, I had some motorbikes as well at the same time, but that's when I bought the Cappuccino. Then I sold the Audi and the Cappuccino was my daily for a little bit. Again, not my finest moment. I then got a Civic Type R EP3, which I loved on the B roads. I loved on track. It just wasn't the best for an M40 commute. Sold the EP3 for my M3, the E46 M3, now selling that as well. And in the meantime, I also acquired a Toyota Sera manual somewhere along the way. Growing up, my dream car, the poster car, and I feel like it's still a bit of my poster car. It was the NSX. Just because living and growing up in Portugal, I think we lived the Senna phenomenon a lot closer. When he died, I remember exactly how people just went silent, or he was, because he was so loved by everyone in the country. He lived in the country at the time. And I think just seeing all the images of him washing the car and driving it around just really seared into my brain. So that's still one of my poster cars. I still love one if they were ridiculously expensive. My current poster car, I now generally have a poster above my desk. It's something like a 930 or a 964 Turbo. Probably never going to be able to afford one in my lifetime, but you can dream. Growing up as a female liking cars, my friends didn't get it. I would go around in my flip phone taking pictures of Honda S2000s, what are you doing? So it felt quite lonely until I felt I was able to find other people, usually boys, that were into the same stuff as I was. Same for uni as well. Very often I was the only girl in the room, same at work. I think these days is a lot better. I did struggle a little bit when I was working in manufacturing, just because it's a very old school environment, a very sexist environment. I had people being pretty awful or asking me, what are you? Saying things that weren't really nice when you're just trying to get on with work. And there's lots of people that doubted I could do the job as well. It was really funny. The thing I noticed is that if you're a guy in my team, people just assumed that you knew how to do your job, and you almost had to prove them that you couldn't. But if you were bad, for me it was the opposite. People just assume I couldn't until I proved them wrong. I was never really looking for a Suzuki Cappuccino, but I fell in love with this specific car. It belonged to a friend. He's an American who was studying in Oxford, and he decided he was just going to buy cars that he couldn't buy in the US. And he bought it. It was his daily, and he just kept posting pictures of it next to very big cars. And I just loved seeing the pictures, I just loved the car. And one day I was like commenting on something and said, oh, I'm selling the car. And I was going for a bit of a moment in my life. I was feeling a bit down, things not going very well, and I just had like this compulsion to save the car. I was like, no, you're not. I'm gonna buy this car from you. And I remember waking up the next day feeling like my life has turned around. I was like, this is not the right moment to spend money on a rusty car. But I remember I just sat down watching Initial D that morning. The episode that came up was the one with Suzuki Cappuccino, and I was like, well, fine, it's a sign. I'm gonna have it. And I'm just basically in love with this car. It is my forever car, this one. I bought it 6 years ago. Just 2 years ago, I had it fully restored, bare shell restoration. Spent a lot of money on it, but it really needed it. It got to the point where you either spend the money or it's just not worth saving. And because this car meant so much to me, I just decided I need to save it. The wheels, they're Monterey Turbina S. They're actually not period correct for the car. They're older than the car. They're from like the 80s. It's on coilovers. I've also installed nose lift because the car is low and sometimes you get stuck on bumps. On the road, it just drives like a cart. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm selling this one, because on a sunny day like this, I'll always grab the keys for this one first, because the experience of driving it just feels like a race car. It's tiny, it's terrifying. I don't necessarily want to go on the motorway with it, but on the B roads, it's like driving around Silverstone. It's like nothing else. And I just love that experience so much that this is the one I usually grab the keys for. People find it really funny. There's a lot of stairs, there's a lot of pointing on the road, but I don't think anyone ever gets mad at you if you're driving a Cappuccino. Never experienced any road rage in this car, which is fantastic. For anyone that hasn't seen the roof of the Cappuccino, it comes out in 3 different panels. So you can actually have a T-top Targa convertible. You can move stuff up and down. And you can even put that back up. So it gives you lots of options. And it all fits in the boot. So I bought this car, it was kind of just during COVID, just before the prices started going a bit mental. I've had my EP3 Civic Type R, which great on B roads. I didn't really enjoy the commute. I struggled to gel with it. Loved it on track, didn't really love it outside of the track that much. And I wanted something that I could make miles and be really comfortable in, but still had that bit of an edge. And for ages, I tried to fight the E46 M3, because it feels like a bit of everyone gets one. If you're into cars, you know someone that's had one. It's almost like getting a 911. You kind of try to fight it, but at the end of the day, it's got to be the right choice. I really fought it really hard, and then I found this one online. I loved the color. This is steel grey. I loved the red interior, and I took it out, and it was just, the noise is intoxicating. I'm like, if you really go for it, it's just that raspy, honky S54 noise, and I just fell in love with it. And this car in particular, when I bought it, was already a very high mileage car. Is an SMG that was converted to manual. So it was like just a usable M3 that I didn't have to worry about losing value every time I took it out, and I just could use it and daily it and really enjoy it. And it was just a perfect car for that time of my life. I did some things to it. When I bought it, there's a bit of a vision to be had. So one of the previous owner had changed all the interior trim with red hydro dip carbon. It was on the standard diamond cut wheels. So I spent some time putting it actually back to stock, bringing it back to what it looked like out of the factory. It's on springs. I think it's just 10mm springs, so not a lot, but just kind of bring it down a little bit. The wheels, they're E90, E92 M competition wheels. It's quite similar to the CSL ones, just not as expensive, but actually a bit more concave, which I think looks a little bit better. I've had 80% of the car painted, wings done, a lot of it was been fully detailed, all the lenses replaced. So it's been very cared for in my ownership. I spent probably as much caring for it than I did buying it. I think I'm going to really regret selling it. That's one of the reasons I'm not trying to look at it too much, because it looks too good and I will regret it. But I've made my peace with it. I'm ripping the band-aid off. Try not to think too much about it. I loved it. I had an amazing time with it. I'm so glad I got to experience it, but it's time for something else. Actually, one of the memories I really enjoy with it was quite recent. It was when I picked it up from having a lot of work done and being detailed. So I didn't see this car for almost a year. I picked it up and I remember on the M6, just after the tolls, it was the first time I really got to go on a throttle after a very long time, and I had the biggest smile on my face. I was like laughing on the inside of the car. It was just bringing back the memories of the noise and how much I loved it. And I'm trying not to do that again or I won't sell it. So I've got a Toyota Sera, which is a car that shouldn't exist, but I'm so glad it does. It looks like a completely standard car. You probably wouldn't look twice if you see it on the road. It actually shares the same base as a Tercel or a Starlet. It was never sold in the UK. It's a Japan-only car. But it just so happens that Toyota thought, why don't we give this car gull-wing doors? So the doors actually open up. It's basically exactly what you see on the McLaren F1, because McLaren took the Sera doors as an inspiration. And it's ridiculous. It's like driving a glass house. And it's boaty. It doesn't drive as nice as the Cappuccino. It doesn't make the noises of the M3. That is such a cool experience because it's such a weird car. And that one is best driven on a rainy day when you can hear the rain on the full glass roof. It's just, I can fall asleep. It's really cool. And I didn't really plan to buy it at all. And I swear, this time usually I say that. I was at work and one of my colleagues just walked up to my desk and said, "Hey Joe, you like Toyota Seras, don't you?" I said, "Yes." We never spoke about this, but yes. And it really made me an offer that was like, it's ridiculous, I could not refuse. And we're talking about, it's like worst case scenario, even if the car was rotten, I could still make money out of it, selling the doors or something. Yeah, that kind of stabilized a little bit the logistics of the fleet, because I wasn't planning for it. But I'm looking forward to enjoy it.